So I'd like to introduce you to Chris Clement. And Chris is a very experienced full stack dev, but more the front end JavaScript side, and 40% back to the .NET Core back end side of things. Chris, how have you enjoyed the last months living and breathing Blazor?
Well, I enjoy the ride, and I also enjoy a couple of new experience. Like it just feels different, It's always enjoyable learning new things.
And how many people on your team developing this?
We have a 3-core team, but we have like one member come off and on and go.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And coming from a JavaScript world into Blazor, was it stressful?
Surprisingly, not really. Because we are currently using the .NET 5 preview, like a lot of fancy features from .NET 5.
Yeah.
So it feels actually. I'm expecting to be like a lot of blockers, but then it turns out it's not as much blockers as I thought of.
Oh.
And yeah, it's a really nice experience overall.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me something that you miss from JavaScript.
Well, I miss the, for example, because JavaScript has a lot of its history has been longer than Blazor. There's a lot of libraries that you can just directly use to do this and to do that. But in Blazor, well, you can still use JavaScript in Blazor, but then you have to to do the workaround to make the JavaScript work. So yeah, it's something I miss.
Okay. Oh, cool. And this project was a massive Silverlight project that we did many years ago. Did you choose Blazor because of Silverlight? Is that the main reason, or was there another reason?
No, it's not because of the Silverlight, but when we do when we proposed the solution earlier, we also take a look at their particular skill set. This particular client, they have a lot of C# developers. So obviously, when you have a proficient in one skill, and just because you want to start using modern JavaScript, then you can't just relearn all of those JavaScript. So basically, that's why we think Blazor is actually a good choice for them.
Okay.
And yeah, because it's on C#.
And what made you decide to talk tonight about Fluxor?
Yeah, because my main background is from front-end developers, and Redux is actually pretty popular in in JavaScript. But for a back-end developer, we may not. Some of the guys might not even heard of Redux before, and just want to share hey, this is a great tool, and we can definitely apply this to Blazor, so we can make the workflow even faster and easier to expand.
And you've introduced this to the client C# developers. How did that transition go?
This is a full new project, so there's no transition yet, but we'll see about that.
Okay, so that's next. So they should be watching tonight to implement it, should they?
Yes, it's a good resource, new learning, yeah?
Okay, all right. Well, let's kick it off, and I'm very keen to see it.
All right, so hello, everyone. Let me just ask you guys the first question, really. Have you ever felt so frustrated working in a large and complex web app, and all of it is because you just want to add this one small feature, but then you realize that you don't know where to begin with because everything is just so interconnected and so massively complex. So today I will show you one of my favorite tools, which is Redux pattern. So with Redux pattern, we can solve and deconstruct a large and complex application into a scalable building blocks. I will specifically talk about Blazor WebAssembly because it's the hottest thing at the moment for .NET world. And my name is Chris Clement. I'm a software architect at SSW. You can reach me in my Twitter at ChrisToment, or you can also reach me in my GitHub, github.com/ChrisToment. Couple of facts about me. I'm an electronics engineer, so you can say that I'm kind of like a half-breed between hardware and software. Um, and also, I've been programming since 2007 with using the old legacy VB6. It's actually pretty surprising that in just 13 years, we now have like a lot of technologies. When we compare all of those technologies with VB6 back then, it's just so there's a lot of improvements. And also, I am a front-end guy. My main tools are Angular, React, and Blazor. I'm keen to learn Vue, by the way, because it's also another hot thing in the market. And also, I am a gaming enthusiast. So I currently playing Final Fantasy 14. So if you guys love gaming, feel free to reach me out and we can have a nice talk. All right. So I will start off the talk by talking why Redux and what is Redux basically. And then I'll continue on like showing a couple of nice Redux libraries in Blazor. And then I'll move on into, I'll do like a little demo how to use Fluxor in Blazor. Finally, we will close the talk later on in the conclusion section. All right, so why Redux? I'll give you an example. So this is an example of you have a view that is consists of one edit button, and you also have a form. So we have two states. The first one is a Boolean editable. So that will indicate whether we want to show the toggle edit button or not. Then when we press the toggle edit button, it will update the isEditing Boolean. So the isEditing indicates that the current form is in edit mode. And then we also want to populate the form data with a pre-filled form information. And finally, we have a submit button that will submit the form. Okay, we also want to disable the submit button if it's not isEditing. So we have to check from the state whether it's isEditing or not. All right, that sounds simple and straightforward. But then a couple of sprints later, there's a new requirement. So we want to add an async text validator based on the form input. So now we have to disable the submit button based on the form data. So now, as you can spot on the problem, if we keep adding more and more things into this particular page, it will get even more complex with all of the mutation happening, and you don't know which one modify which one. And so you have to keep track where does it begin and where does it end. And imagine if you have a new member in your team, then they need to work on this project. So it's really hard to keep follow. Basically, you can 100% agree that he or she will spend a bit of nice time trying to figure out what's going on in this page. So let's redo this with Redux pattern. So first, we have the same state on the left side. We have the editable and isEditing, but I also have two more value there, which is enable submit and also form data, which I will show you why I have this two additional value there. And then on the right side, I have the toggle edit button, I have the form, I have the submit button, I also have this async validator on the right side. Okay, so what's the difference? The difference is I will put the state in a store. So store in Redux is just a simple object that holds the state, and it also has a couple of bits methods that we can call the store. Like in JavaScript, there's a subscription, but in C# we don't not using subscription. But that's a huge topic, so feel free to reach me out later for a better explanation on in-depth explanation of that one. But let's just focus on this example. So this state over here, this will solely drive the view. Like if it's editable, then we show the button. If it's editing, we show the form. And if it's enable submit, then we will enable the submit button. And also we want to pass the form data to the async validator. So if you notice that the arrow is one way, so how do we update the state? So in Redux pattern, when you want to update the state, you have to launch a thing called actions. So action could be like toggle edit, which indicates that you want to toggle the edit, or it can also be like a form update that you want to says that you want to update the form, or it also can be a form submit actions that you want to submit the form. And this action over here, it will be passed on to the store, and we have another component in the store called reducer. So reducer, this is a pure function that takes two input. The first one is your action, and the second one is the previous state or the current state. Like before we updated, this is the current state. So depending on your action, your fired action, and also your parameter within your action, and based on the previous state, this reducer will update the next state. So that's the Redux pattern simplified. So there's a couple of things I want to highlight there. So the first one is, as you see, everything is a unidirectional data flow. So you can be 100% confident that there will be no accidental mutation happening. Everything has to go through action. And that is also because everything has to go through actions, you can track every single change. You can see the whole actions in a historical order, and like this particular action mutate this particular state, and so on. So everything is tracked. And then next one, because we are using pure function, the state change will always be deterministic. There's no third party or external factor that will change the state that we don't want, because pure function will only accept two inputs, and it also will make this easier to test. And lastly, we have a single source of truth. When you want to look a particular, let's say you just go into the project and you open the project, you want to find out where is the thing that disables submit button, you can just go to the store, because this is a single source of truth. Everything is there. All right. So in summary, my most favorite benefit in Redux pattern is, first of all, it's a unidirectional data flow, no accidental mutation. Next one is a single source of truth, so you can take a peek at the state and then you know what exactly in your view. And also has a deterministic state change, so it's very easy to do unit tests. And lastly, which is one cool thing that we can do, is time traveling. So I will show you guys later on in my demo. But basically, because I've already, if you want to change the state, you have to fire an actions, right? So because you keep the track of every actions, you basically can go to a particular slice in time, and you can see what's happening in the view at that particular time. I'll show you this one later on. It's a really cool feature. I like it. All right. I've shown you why Redux and what is Redux. So now I'll show you a couple of libraries with Blazor. So I did a bit of research and I found these nice libraries. The first one is Blazor Redux. It has a 416 stars, but it was last updated 2 years ago. So I reckon this library is very popular back then when the Blazor just launched. But then for some reason they have stopped updating it. So you might want to keep that in mind if you use this library. It might not be compatible with the latest .NET because it wasn't updated. It was updated a long time ago. Next one is called Blazor State. So Blazor State is it has 14 stars. It's not much, but it was updated quite recent, more recent than the previous one, which is 9 months ago. And also the third one we have a thing called Blazor Dash State. This was developed by Time Warp Engineering. It has 163 stars, and it also been updated recently. One more fun fact about this one: they actually made the dispatcher to follow Mediator. So if any of you is a fan of Mediator, then you might want to try this library because it's using Mediator under the hood. And lastly, my favorite is called Fluxor. It has 169 stars, and it was last updated 15 days ago, as per 13 September 2020. All right, so why do I love Fluxor? The first one, because it was actively maintained. I'm using Fluxor in my real life project, and we have an issue a month ago, and we raised a issue in their GitHub page, and they are very active, and they solved the issue within just 1 day. So kudos to those guys. They're pretty awesome. And the next one, they also use vanilla Redux terminologies like actions, reducers, state, and effects. So if you're new to Redux pattern, then if you want to find a reference in online, then it's very beneficial to have like a vanilla term. So you don't only get the reference to this particular library, but you also get the blog post for even like React and Angular, which under the hood is everything is Redux. And the third one, it has Redux DevTool extension, which is a really powerful extension in Chrome if you want to debug a Redux-enabled application. You can pick into the state. You can look at the action history. You can also do the time traveling using this extension. I'll show you guys later on about this extension. And lastly, Fluxor works with .NET 5. So in my project, we use a .NET 5 Preview 8. And this evening, I also see that this also runs on .NET 5 RC1. So I think Fluxor is they support the latest .NET 5. So I'm keen to try the RC1 in depth, see if it's 100% work with RC1. All right. So I've shown you guys what and why Redux. Now I'll show you guys a couple of libraries with Blazor. And now I am going to do a bit of demo how to use Fluxor in Blazor WebAssembly. All right. So now, as you can see, I have a blank workspace. Let me just clear it. Now I want to create a new .NET project. So I'll do .NET new Blazor WebAssembly. And then doing the restoring and so on. All right, done. So now I'm going to run this nice little command in .NET watch run. So this will create, this will continually monitor the files and will build the .NET, the Blazor app for you. Well, so if you have a new change in your file, then it will rebuild it and show refresh it for you, which is super awesome. All right. So in my screen right now, I have the scaffold Blazor app. So we have the home, we have a counter, we have the fetch data. That is the normal Blazor template. But one place that I particularly want to talk about is the counter. So this is a simple page, really. So when you click the Click Me button, it will increase the count by 1. But if you go back and then go back to this page, then it will just reset the count. Basically, just store the number of count in locally in the component. So what I want to do in this demo is I want to transform this page to use Redux pattern. So if we go back, I'll show you we want to do something like this. So I will create a counter state, which is the state with the integer count. And this count will be displayed in our counter.razor page. And then whenever we click the Click Me button, we will launch an action called add counter. And this add counter will then we send this to the store, to the reducer. And this counter reducer will read the previous state of count. Let's say I have the count of 2, then it will read it, and it will add it by 1. So now the next count is 3. And this count is the count 3. It will be displayed in counter.razor. That's pretty simple. All right, so let's do it. First of all, I am going to install the Fluxor library. I have a cheat sheet over here. I'm going to copy this one. .NET add package Fluxor Blazor.web. So let's wait for it doing its thing. All right, and also going to install the optional extension called Redux DevTools. So this NuGet package will enable us to connect the Fluxor with the with the Chrome Redux DevTool extension. All right, so now we have those libraries installed. The next one we need to install the glue, which is the JavaScript file for the Fluxor. I'm going to copy that. Then I am going to open a Visual Studio Code in my demo folder. And I'm going to look for index.html, which the entry point of a static web page. I am going to paste it there. So now I have my index.html will load this index.js file at the beginning, which just right after Blazor WebAssembly .js file. So next one is I want to go to the app.razor. We want to install the glue for the Fluxor. So if we load this Fluxor component in the app.razor, this Fluxor component will automatically initialize the store for you. Although you can also do that explicitly if you love, if you want to more control of your code, you can just using add code, and then you can add your on-initialize async, and then you can just initialize the store manually. But for the demo purpose, I'll put this one so it will be much simpler. Okay, so now we have the JavaScript, we have the initializer. Next one is we need to go to the program.cs, and then we need to actually add Fluxor. So Fluxor has a this nice add Fluxor method that comes from the services. So with this add Fluxor button, add Fluxor method, the thing that we want is we can instruct the Fluxor library to scan the assemblies. So the Fluxor libraries will scan your assemblies for your reducer, for your select, for your state, and for your reducer state and actions. So it'll do the automatic scan for you, so you don't have to manually add it to the store manually. So I am going to pass the assembly of my program. Type of a program. Oh, misspelled there. .assembly. All right. And at the same time, I want to also add the Redux DevTool using the use Redux DevTool method there. So this is purely optional. So if you want to go production and you don't want to support, you don't want your end user to open the Redux DevTool, then you can just not run this command using the if debug, for example. So, yeah, so it's a pretty versatile on which way you want to use it. Okay, so now once we have this one installed, the next one, if we go back to the slide, let's make the counter. Sorry, let's make the counter state, and then we can move on to making the action, and finally we can create the reducer. So now I'm going to create a new folder called store, and then this one I will create a new file called counterstate.cs. So putting all the boilerplate code, and then this is where I want to use the shiny C#9 features. So I'm going to use public record counter state. So record is a new modifier in C#9 that allows you to create an immutable data class. So it's really powerful, and it opens a lot of options that we can use the record for. So I'll show you guys later on why I want to use record. So for now, I am going to add public int count. So public getter, and also a new modifier called init. This init will make the count creatable only at when you in the construction time, but otherwise you can't change the you can mutate the count, which is what we want in the state. It's in Redux state is immutable. We want that one. So. And the next one is the glue for Fluxor. So we want to create a new class called counter feature state. And this will extend feature. This is, oops. So feature, and the underneath is counter. So feature is a Fluxor class that will, so the when you remember that we have a scan assemblies in the program.cs, it will search for this feature and then automatically add it to the state. So you don't have to do additional configuration. So now let's just implement the class. So we have to implement these two methods. The first one is getName. The getName will, when we supply this, then it will set the name for our counter state. So for now, I don't like hard-coded strings, so I'm just going to use the name of counter state. And the second method that we have to implement is to set up the initial state. So I am going to return a new counter state with count equal to 0. All right, so we now have the state. Actually, I can show you. We can quickly check whether the state is there or not. So opening my Chrome developer tools, and because I have the plugin called Redux DevTool extension installed, now I have a new tab called Redux. I'm going to go there. Then this is the Redux DevTool. So now I want to click the state. Oh no, we don't have the state. Why? Because the Blazor somehow it doesn't, the .NET watch run doesn't compile whenever, because we add the counter state, it doesn't compile it yet. So that's a bit weird thing from .NET watch run. So a nice trick that I have in my hand is I can run touch command, and I point it to my CS proj. So basically, it just triggers this the .NET Watch on my left console, so it will rebuild the whole app. All right. So let's check. There you go. Now we have counter state. So this is counter state, the one that we supply with name of counter state, and we also have the current state. Okay, now let's continue. We have the state. Now we're going to make the action, the add counter action. Let's go. I'm going to add new file called addCounter.cs. The boilerplate code. And then I want to also use the record add counter. For now, I don't think I need an additional parameter to the action, so I just leave it as an empty one. So now we have the action. And then the next one, we have to create the reducer. So this action can change the counter state. So now I will create a counter reducer. We have boilerplate code. And then now let's make the reducer. As I said before, reducer is a pure function. So the way Fluxor set it up, so we have to put it under a public static class. What do I counter reducer as the name? And then let's Fluxor allows you to create a reducer for each action. So we want to create a reducer that will react to the add counter action. So I will create a public static method, and the return type of reducer is obviously the counter state, because it will read the previous state and action and will return the state. So the name I choose will be on add counter, so it's intuitive because we want to change based on add counter action. So the input one is the state, and the input 2 is add counter, which is the action. Now, to make this method discoverable by Fluxor, we need to slap in one attribute called reducer method. So from the Fluxor library. So now this is why I want to use the record type and C#9, because with the record type you can do this. You can return the same state, but with only a specific field that you want to change. So imagine if your state has 3 fields, you don't have to go like a new counter state and then you copy each one of your attributes. You just need to pass in the one thing that you need to update. So for example, this count, I will read the previous count. So now when I use state with, this will duplicate the state with the count parameter to be this value. So the other field value will remain the same. The one thing that changes is only the count. And one thing that is nice with this one is that this will duplicate the record the data class without any connection to the previous, the original class, which is very powerful. Just a simple reference copy is the whole copy. So if you're a TypeScript developer, then it might be pretty similar to do something like ... state and then comma count equal to state.count. So you can say it's pretty equivalent there. All right, so now we have the action, we have the reducer, and we also have the state. So everything should be working now, except that we need to go to the counter.razor, the actual page that is the actual component that rendering this page, and we need to hook this to the Fluxor. So first step is we need to inherit Fluxor component. So that is coming from fluxor.blazor.web.components.fluxor component. So by inheriting from this particular component, Fluxor will take care of updating, to instruct the Blazor to update the page whenever there's a state change. So you don't have to do it manually, which is really awesome. And then the next one is we want to inject a couple of things. I'm going to use using and then Fluxor, so we don't have to type a lot of things. So the first thing you need to inject is the I state, which is it will be injected with the counter state, and then we can use the value within the counter state in this template. So now I'm going to inject that with demo.store.counterState. Let's name it as counter state. And so now with this counter state, we can replace the current count in. Instead of representing a field, now we just use like a simple getter. So we can directly grab the value from the counter state. So this count is the one that we have in the counter state. See there, demo.store.counterState. And the next one, we want to fire an action when we increment the count. So now we need to inject the second thing called iDispatcher. So iDispatcher is the service that will dispatch an action for you, and it will trigger the appropriate reducer to update the state. So let's name it dispatcher. And we can just replace the current count, this one, with dispatcher.dispatch, and then we pass in the action that we want to fire. So that is new demo.store.addCounter. All right, so I think everything now is hooked up. So let's save it and then go back to our Blazor app. Okay, so now let's click on this one. Ooh, oh no, what happened? As you see in the dev tool, we can see that the action is being fired. So whenever I click this, it will add a new entry. So that is the action that we fired. But for some reason, the numbers there doesn't add up. So what happened? So let's pick at the diff here. So diff is the difference between the previous state and the current state. And as you can see, it says the states are equal. So whatever we do back there, it doesn't change the state. So now what we need to do, let's take a peek at the counter reducer. So reducer is, remember, reducer is a pure function that changes the counter state. So this is the issue. So as you see, when I do return state, I only pass in the previous value of count. I didn't actually add it by 1. So now let's fix that. I've added this +1 and then save it. And then let's go back to our demo app. Oh, I don't think it has built. So let's go back to this one and force trigger. All right, so it has rebuilt. So let's try it again. Hopefully it will work this time. Click. There you go. Now we have add counter action. You can see in the right side of the screen, the count changed from 0 to 1. Then let's just click more and more. It keeps adding the count more and more and more, which is basically the function of this page. Super awesome. All right, so the final thing I want to show you in the demo is the time traveling. So you see this slider over here? this is the historical, this is the time slider for your action. So if I just click, I just drag this one to the middle, and it will change. You see the current count is 16, and if you see the current state, the count is 16. If we go back to the bit for the future, then the count state is now 26, and you see the page view is 26. So with Redux, you can do this time travel. So you can just click next, and then you can also go back, and you can, as you can see, the page view is actually reflecting the state that we have. So this is a super powerful tool. I like it. So if you want to take a look at your previous state, you can do it. It's easy to do with the Redux. All right. So that is the end of the demo. There's one more thing I want to remind you about the Redux. The first thing is that you can have Redux pattern without using a library. So the library is a nice tool that you can use to reduce the amount of boilerplate code. You don't have to add this, and this, but it doesn't stop you from using a Redux pattern. You can always have a simplified Redux pattern because, as I've shown you before, Redux pattern, the powerful thing in Redux pattern is actually the unidirectional data flow and also the single source of truth, which you can implement it anywhere. You don't have to use library, but it's nice to have, so you don't have to write all the boilerplate codes. And the next one is Redux is just another tool in the box. I can't stress this enough. Redux is just a tool. So there's a couple of tools out there that may fit your solution better than Redux. So please, before you blindly use Redux, try it out. Consider the Redux's plus and minus. Like it has a deterministic state change, for example. That's the benefit, and it also enforces the data flow. It may be a benefit. It may be not a benefit. And it also introduced an extra code overhead. As I've shown you in the graph earlier, and also in my demo, you have to create like an action reducer, and all of those things that you don't need it if you don't use Redux. So and consider these facts, and then you can decide whether this is a good tool that you want to implement in your project or not. All right. So what we've learned today, I've shown you guys a Redux, which is a great pattern to be considered. Also shown you guys a cool C#9 features, which is the record and width duplication. And also shown you how to add Redux in C# in Blazor WebAssembly. It's very easy to set up. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I put the code in my GitHub, so if you want to check the source code out, you can just hit me on GitHub and on Blazor with Redux repository. And you can also scan this QR code if you have a QR code scanner. And if you have any question, feel free to reach me at my Twitter, Clement, and then we can have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was fantastic. Yes, fantastic.
Great, thank you.
I really like that. So thank you so much. I might just switch over to my machine just so everyone can see the QR code so they can give you some feedback. Guys, be harsh. Give him some feedback. Give him some comments. He will be doing this session again, so you can only get better with feedback. And while you're scanning that QR code, guys, I'm going to ask Chris a few questions that I'm just curious about. And Chris, to answer these questions, if you need to switch back to your own computer, just request control again.
Yeah, can you do that again? Sorry. I think I clicked the wrong button.
No, look, just leave it on here unless you need it. But I'm curious, do you prefer for your Blazor development to be in VS Code or Visual Studio?
At the moment, VS Code is kind of work in most of the cases, but I've also experienced a bit of where VS Code just draw a wiggle red line under everything in my .razor component. So in that case, then I have to switch to the Visual Studio. But otherwise, I like Visual Studio Code better because it's lightweight.
Okay, so I might ask that question again because I didn't realize that you were going to say both. What percentage of your time doing Blazor development are you in VS Code versus Visual Studio?
I think it's close to 60% on VS Code and 40% on Visual Studio.
Okay. Oh, cool. And regarding the, what you did tonight, that code, if you were to compare doing the same thing in Angular or React, do you have to write more or less code?
It's pretty much the same because all I wrote is just a reducer. You need that in Angular. State, you need that in Angular or React. You also need the action anyway. So pretty much the same amount of code.
Right.
And with the C#9 features, actually, it become pretty similar. I imagine if you don't have C#9, you have to write more code because you have to duplicate the state.
Okay. And in your real client project, to do this job that you're doing in Blazor, are you writing more or less code than if you had done this project in Angular or React?
Well, talking about Redux, it's pretty much the same amount of code. But yeah, as I said earlier on, there's a couple of things in Blazor that doesn't work yet. So I have to do like a workaround using JavaScript to trigger something.
Right.
So yeah, eventually it's a bit more code, but it's not that much.
Okay. And are there any productivity improvements that the Blazor team could add to make your life easier?
I think they pretty much already have everything in the roadmap. For example, like in the RC1 they just released yesterday, they have the JavaScript isolation. So if you want to have a JavaScript local to only one component, you can do that. Otherwise, you will pollute the window. But one thing that I would really love to have is the SCSS support. So that is the like an enhanced CSS. So for front end, it's pretty powerful tool, and at the moment Blazor only supports CSS. So
right.
Yeah.
How important is hot reload to you?
I guess it depends on the size of the project. If the project is if it has a lot of screens, then you don't want to refresh it and then navigate back to your old page just to check the code. You want that hot reloading. But I guess for a small project with a couple of screens, then it doesn't really matter how hot reload.
Okay, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now this code, this Fluxor, is this in your client project that you and the other SSW devs are using? Is it in the project now?
Yes.
It is.
Yes, it's in the project now.
Okay.
Yes.
And you plan on introducing it to the client developers when you hand over the project later, do you?
Yep, definitely.
And do you think they're going to be freaked out by this, or they're just used to the patterns in Angular, so that's all cool?
Actually, I'm not sure about the whether they use this one in Angular because, as I said, Redux is just a tool. So it's not like it's not baked into Angular, so they might not use it.
They do. I can tell you. I happen to know they do use Redux in Angular, and they know it well. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should be walking in the park.
And okay, that's good. And how much of an improvement has the C#9 record types made to your code cleanliness?
With the record type, is actually So I think I can go back to the code and see you this particular code. So in C# you can just duplicate the code, right? So in my current state, you only have one field. But imagine if you have like 10 fields that you have in your state, then without the record type, then you have to copy it manually. Then it will become a massive lines of code just doing nothing but replicating the previous value.
Right.
So I can say it actually cleans up the code, maybe like 80% of the code.
Oh, wow. 80% of the code. That's
in the reducer anyway.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris, for putting that together. Thank you for all those that are watching. We're going to hand over to JK, but if you do want to give Chris any feedback, you can go to the ssw.com.au homepage, and there is a link there to give them feedback. So